Hey everybody, it's your girl Angela Kotz, and I'm here with Ghost Hunting Beauties. And to my left over here is Amy Lee with Spring Paranormal Investigations.
Hello.
She is the ghost hunting lady with the mostest, the ghostess with the mostest. Is that how we say it? So she's here today. She's been a part of our team. She's kind of taken us under her wing, and we've gone on some really great adventures. She shared her stories with us, her background. I mean, she's gone from level 1 to level 4 of ghost hunting. She's taught us a little bit about demonology, some of the most taboo topics that not everyone's willing to talk about. But I think today that we're going to talk a little bit more about the process, if you would share with us. So a lot of people want to know about what you do, because what is Spring Paranormal Investigations? What is your company? And then run us through the process of step 1, step 2 of an investigation and what all entails.
Okay. Yes, we are Spring Paranormal Investigations. We aim to help people. That is pure and simple, bottom line. It's all about helping other people. People that are in a bad situation and have no one to call, don't know what to do. That's where we come in.
Who are you going to call? I had to do it. I had to do it since you love Ghostbusters. I had to do it.
It's on our playlist.
I love it.
So, yeah, we're all about that. Typically it starts, client will find us, whether they're referred. These days, because of the specialty, when we changed it to becoming a specialty team that specializes in malevolent and demonic hauntings, a lot of our cases now are referrals. Nice. Either from other clergy that have not been successful and feel it needs another touch, or from maybe their church itself as a whole, right. Or other investigators who feel that they're in over their head that call us to come and help. So a lot of them are referrals. Some of them, though, are just people who find us online through various means.
Like we did.
Right. And they'll call me. Usually what I tell people is, I'm not going to think you're crazy. Just start at the beginning, kind of when it started, and progress with the events.
So forming that bond.
Right. Everybody's hesitant at first, usually. And then, once the floodgates open, they really open. And then it's, this and this and this. No, last night was this. And,
right.
So I kind of go through, I note everything. I make my own observations and get my own feel kind of for the person or the family and what the situation is. And after doing this for so long, I usually have a fair sense of what's going on, just in listening. Mm-hmm. Whether it's something that pertains more to the people involved, or whether it is more paranormal, whatever the case may be. And then I determine based on that if I think we're the best fit.
Right.
If we are the best fit and I feel that, then I will take the case. If I don't feel we're the best fit, then I will refer that case either to another team or another type of practitioner, and make those recommendations from there. So
what do you feel would be a good fit versus this is not a good fit?
So sometimes, unfortunately, it's another one of those taboo topics within this, but, mental illness does come into play. And I'll have somebody who will tell me, I've been diagnosed schizophrenic, and, I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things. So there's a lot of questions that come in play. Are you living alone, or are you living with other people? If you're living with other people, are they having these experiences, or is it just you?
Right.
So there's a lot of questions. You have to have a little bit of a counseling background or an aptitude for that to be able to feel that out.
For sure.
But a lot of times I can get a sense of, I think this is more something within the individual. In which case I may recommend certain types of therapy that are open to the paranormal, but where that person can get help on both ends, both for kind of dealing with and navigating that and going through the therapy side of things.
Right. So at least you're still trying to help them.
Absolutely. I try to help everybody who calls, whether I think it's valid paranormal, whether I think it's mental illness, no matter what the case is. Some people are just scared and lonely. And sometimes talking to that person for an hour could mean just mountains to that person.
That's incredible.
When COVID started, I had a person who called me who was, and I'll be careful what I say here,
Right.
but who was kind of at the end of his rope. And he feared that his son was possessed
Oh, no.
and had kicked his son out of the house. As I listened to him and what his concerns were and how he came to this conclusion, it was very apparent to me that was probably not the case, and that there was an extreme level of mental illness and the stress of being quarantined and not being able to be with other people and be in his normal daily life had just stressed him.
Right. So I think that was the case for a lot of people, was the pandemic had all of us feeling a little bit on edge and crazy. So I'm sure you got a lot more influx of calls around that time.
I did. And, because for a little bit we were kind of dry docked too. And I shut it down and said, well, we can't go do investigations because it was
safety first.
Yeah, it was just too dangerous. We did keep running through most of it, but there was a brief period there where it was really bad. So
Right. So step one, they call, you say you're a good fit or you're not a good fit. So what's the next level?
So if I agree to take the case, then I get some information from them, address, family history stuff, which usually comes out when they're telling me about all the other things. If not, then, I usually ask several questions. At that time, then I take the information, I'll go over, we don't charge for our services. We never have. We don't believe in that. So the only thing we charge is a travel fee, and it's based on area. So if they're local, obviously it's going to be a smaller monetary fee, basically covering gas money, is how we look at it. If it's a long distance case, we have to go out of town, depending on the distance. If it's drivable, I'll drive it, and then we'll have a hotel for the weekend. And then possibly one day on the comeback, again, just dependent on distance. And that's really it. We keep it down, just travel, hotel and gas. If it's really far out of state, if it's in Louisiana, we'll drive it. Pretty much anywhere else out of state usually is a flight.
Right.
So, that gets a little higher only because we can't control those prices, unfortunately.
Right.
But yeah, we never charge for services. So, at that point I will start delving into the history of the address. I look at who lived there prior.
Do your research.
How old the house is. And I'm also looking for things about the house. If it's a historical house, if it's pier and beam, I want to know that because I know that animals can crawl under there, and this could account for certain noises, certain smells. I want to know what kind of heating and AC system it has as to the noises we might hear.
You're like, is it grandpa or a raccoon in the attic?
Exactly. And a lot of times it is a raccoon in the attic.
And sometimes it's grandpa.
So, there's a lot of things like that. I do kind of a whole write-up on the house itself, the structure, how many square feet. If we're dealing with land, I need to know how many acres, so there's a lot of that.
Y'all are thorough. That is awesome.
And then I researched the town, the area.
Wow.
What is the history of that town? What major things happened there? What was it known for, way back when it was settled? What native tribes were in that area? So kind of compile a history of that property.
Extra thorough.
Now, sometimes, we will have those callers that we lived in another house and we think whatever was there followed us.
Oh.
So I may delve into that too, if I think it really pertains, and look up both of them so that I kind of have a running history of both going on when we get on site. I share that with my team members, not with my medium. Typically she's brought in dry, so she knows nothing. Most of the time she'll show up at headquarters and she's like, where are we going tonight? No, we're going, to Fort Worth, or we're going here.
Right.
And she's like, okay.
That way the real authenticity to naturally not be biased to.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. I love it.
With my sensitives, it's kind of a give or take. Do you want to know? Do you not want to know? Sometimes they'll tell me, I don't want to know tonight. Okay.
There you go.
Let's not share it then. The ones who want to know, I'll tell them. The only thing that I always tell all of them, regardless, is if it's a suspected demonic or something really malevolent or people are being hurt, then I'll let everybody know up front, this one's dangerous.
Right. Safety first.
Enough said.
Right.
And I don't like people to go into that not knowing. I just don't feel that that's fair.
Plus, they might have extended hours from the story that you told us previously of 6 hours. I mean, my gosh. So let's say it's a typical, let's say they're a good fit. I wouldn't even say typical because I don't think any case is probably typical.
They're all different.
Well, let's say a more standard haunting. Somebody has a haunting. They're a good fit. They call you in. What do you bring certain people for certain types of haunting?
So I do. Like on my team, I work in the office mostly, but I do work in the field a little bit with construction. My son used to work construction. One of my guys is an electrician. So, depending on the claims may depend on who I have help me investigate that case. If they're having a whole lot of lights and TVs coming on and things flickering,
electrical.
I want my electrician there, right? So,
well, that's great that you go through that.
yeah. So it's it's very. It's also, of course, by the size of the house. If we have a very small house, then we don't need very many of us there. You don't want to have too many people in that space. You want them to feel comfortable and be able to spread out. So
right.
It just depends. But if we're doing, a big mansion or something, then I need more of my team members and more teams. We always work in twos, always in pairs.
That's smart.
So if we have all of us, we're running 3 teams. If, we only have one set, we might only have one team if it's a really small place. Usually it's 2 teams. So usually there's 4 of us.
Cool.
But sometimes a little more, and sometimes I just want somebody with a particular skill set. So it kind of depends.
I have a particular skill set. I always think about that movie. But so you get there, you've got your teams, you've assessed everything, you're ready to go in. What is step 1 when you talk to the family? Do they step outside? Are they typically with you when you're going through and looking around?
So when we arrive, we always get there earlier than we want to start, obviously, to give them time. So we'll greet them. We'll kind of go over everybody who wants to share, things that have happened to them. Usually I'm in contact with the one person who reaches out in the family. Always has to be an adult, always has to be somebody who owns or is the renter of the house. If you're a minor, please don't call me. Have mom or dad call me.
Right. Exactly.
Because I have to have legal permission from the people who are in charge of the house.
It's not a closet monster. Go to bed, Timmy. Go to bed.
So, when we get there, we talk to everybody, though. If they want us to talk to the kids, we talk to the kids. In some cases, kids are really little. Mom and dad don't even want them to know what's going on. So the kids are already out. So it just depends on the situation with that.
It's just mommy's friend.
Right. We've been, people have told them, oh, they're construction workers.
Oh.
They're going to be looking at the house tonight because mommy and daddy are remodeling. And we're like, yep.
Got to bring a tool belt.
But we'll talk to them for a little bit, kind of go through everything. And then we have them give us a tour of the house so that they can point out, this is where things are falling. This is where we're seeing this or that, or hearing things, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And that way we kind of know what the hot spots in the house are before we get started. So we know how to set up audio and cameras and things like that.
Perfect.
And then after that, there's a little bit of paperwork. We've got to have the, practical side of things. And after that, the family's free to leave. We do not investigate with the family in the house.
Okay, so they have to leave.
They have to leave. I have only made very, very rare exceptions for that when somebody's bedridden.
Oh, yeah, true.
And, they may have to have their caretaker stay there with them. So we will basically make sure they have everything they need, access to a bathroom, they're comfortable, and close off that area, and we work around it. But it's very hard to do that. It's very prohibitive because if you have something that is trying to hide, we don't have access to everything.
Right.
If they make any kind of a noise, I've got to double and triple check my audio because I have to, rule a lot of things out that could
Yes.
possibly be them.
Being thorough again.
So we try not to take those cases where possible, just because it's just too hard from a scientific standpoint
Definitely.
to prove and verify things.
So I love
We
that you
need
use like the
full run.
scientific method with that too. That's very, very cool to do that instead of just going, oh, okay, all willy nilly in there. You're like, you've got a method. So the
Right,
family is
definitely.
out. You're looking around. You break out your equipment. What's the first thing that you break out?
So all the lights go on. We get out the EMF detectors, and we go through the whole house. We do all the floors, all the walls. We're looking for things that give off high levels of EMF, which of course is electromagnetic fields. I think we've explained that previously.
Right.
Yes,
That's
we
what I was
don't
going to ask. I was like, for the new people just now listening, what is EMF?
So, gadgets produce electromagnetic fields, microwaves, TVs, Wi-Fi is horrible.
Right.
Things like that. So the more technical equipment somebody has, the more EMF. So a lot of times if they have everything plugged into a power strip, we'll ask ahead, hey, can we shut this off? So
Right.
it doesn't throw things. Sometimes our older homes, the wiring's not as well grounded. So, you'll have certain walls that are hot.
Oh,
you
wow.
know. So we like to know all of those things because when we go into the rooms later to investigate, we want to know where to place our gear. And so that we can avoid those pitfalls and still use our EMF detectors.
With no interference. So that
Right.
way you're not getting false readings, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And
Okay,
if
got
we
it.
put it down and we start to see, and you learn when you do this for a while, something that looks like, some kind of interference rather than something paranormal, then we'll say that on the video and say, rule out K2.
Right.
It's there, it's in the shot, but forget it.
So
And-
what is the K2?
So the K2 is a small EMF detector, handheld, but we handhold them when we walk around and do our initial inspection of the house. But when we actually put them in the shot, we just leave them on the ground because if your hand is on them and they move around too much,
Right.
they can set it off. So I don't like them to be on beds, anything like that. They need to be on a flat surface, a table, on the floor, something where they're not going to get knocked around. They're not going to be moved, at least by us.
Right.
So just for verification.
So what is usually the main place that you find in most semi-typical cases? Like I say, I hesitate to say typical since something's typical, but what is usually the best place to put them? Is it usually in the living room, a bedroom, the kitchen?
So we use those in pretty much every room we're in, just because some spirits like to communicate through that. And it's
So
a
you go
lot
every room.
easier than the flashlight.
Very cool.
Yeah, we like to give them multiple options in every room.
Very
So-
nice. And what other equipment do you generally use?
So of course we have the white noise generator, which we've talked about. We have the REM pods. We have two different kinds. We have one that just senses proximity. We have another one that's a little more advanced that does temperature detection as
wow.
well as proximity.
So explain the temperature detection now. That one's interesting.
So it basically takes a base of the room, and if it should get colder or much hotter suddenly around the piece of equipment, then it will let
so
us
that's
know.
when you know there's a presence.
Right.
Very nice. Is it typically get colder or hotter?
It depends on what you're dealing with. And sometimes it doesn't happen at all. All of these things are kind of in theory. Sometimes you get all of them. Sometimes you get none of them. Sometimes you get bits and pieces.
Very nice.
And you never know when you walk into a house what you're going to get that night. So
It's true.
that's kind of the fun part of it for us that like to deal with it is, it's a mystery and it's always different and unique.
Right? That's why I say I hesitate to ever say typical. So you've got your equipment set up. You found the right spot. So what's the next step?
So the next step is, as we call it, going lights out. We
Ooh.
turn all of the lights out. If they have a newer, very quiet AC or heater, sometimes we will leave it on just because here in Southeast Texas, as you know, it's either freezing cold or it's burning hot.
Exactly.
Just to make it bearable. If they're older or they're louder, they go out. Window units, turn them off.
Oh, I was
'cause
gonna say,
they're way
yeah.
too loud. Ceiling fans, off. Anything that generates any kind of noise, TVs, all of it, off.
So dark and quiet.
Dark and quiet. And then we step out. We usually will take at least a 15 to 20 minute break. If there is a large family and there's been a whole lot of people and a lot of activity in the house before we got there, we may wait even longer.
Oh, wow.
We call it letting it cool down. And we make sure that everything is quiet and serene. And that way the energy of the living people is kind of removed.
Oh.
And it's where they feel they have free reign and it's just them in the house. And we let them get comfortable with that
let them
before we
strut
go
their
back
stuff.
in and start.
So the ghosts are strutting. The house is quiet. You guys walk back in. Where do you go from there?
So often, especially if we have like an open concept, which a lot of houses today are, and a lot of people are knocking down walls who don't have it to get
Right.
that. So we'll typically pick like a living room, kitchen kind of open area often, and we'll start the first session as a group.
Oh, so there's multiple sessions.
That
Okay.
way they can hear us kind of throughout the space. And we call it setting a base. Basically, we will sit down and let them know we're not a threat. We're there to help anything and everything that wants help. That we're going to be respectful, that we're not there to try and intimidate them or do anything like that, and put them at ease and let them know that we're not only there to help the family, we're there to help them too. And that just
nice.
kind of establishes a baseline for them wanting to communicate if they're hesitant or scared to communicate, where they feel more comfortable to come out to us. After every room, we take a break. So we'll go outside, again, let it cool down a bit. And then we kind of go off into our little partnership. So one team may go to the master bedroom and the other team goes to the study on the opposite end of the house and that kind of thing. And we try to keep us where we're more separate. If it's a 2-story house or a 3-story house, then we're on different levels so that we're
Wow.
further away from each other so that we don't have that audio contamination.
No
We have
interference.
Right. We have walkie-talkies. If we don't have the walkie-talkies, we'll communicate via cell phone. We try to keep them on airplane, but we'll have one person on each team keep one on if we don't have the walkie-talkies with us, and keep it far away from the frame so that it doesn't, affect any of the EMF.
Do you record? Like, do you video record anything?
Every session is video recorded. The equipment, usually we have it focused on the equipment that we're trying to get them to speak through. If one of my sensitives or my mediums should channel something or something like that, then we'll grab an extra camera, or we may switch the camera to that individual. So it's kind of a judgment call as to how things are going when you're in the room.
Right, right. So now you've got the rooms, the teams, you're communicating. Well, what typical questions do you ask them? Do you communicate with just asking them who they are, why they're there?
So, most teams are just looking for, they think maybe it's somebody who used to live in the house or a relative or something like that. And they're just kind of scratching the surface. Are you here? Can you move something? Can you do this? Because we clear, our questions are a lot different. That's just the very, very tip of the iceberg is, are you here? Okay, then I want to
Right.
know if you're male or female. I want to know how old you are. I want to get a sense of what you look like. I want to know your name. I want to know how you died. I want to know why you're still here.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier in a previous podcast that we did, we hold ourselves here. So whatever the issue that kept them here is, that's an issue that needs to be worked through.
So it's like ghost counseling. So
Very
you're like, I'm
much.
your friend. We are counseling.
Very,
you.
very much.
Therapy after death.
Yep. And there's definitely an art in knowing how to do that, and knowing what to say, what not to say.
What would be some things you definitely shouldn't say?
Just being, it's more of the way you act in that, just being respectful. A lot of people go in with the intention to provoke, thinking
I've
they'll get
seen that.
activity. And it may give you activity.
Not good activity.
Right. In my experience, nothing good comes of that.
No.
I mean, it's like walking up, ghosts were people too. It's true.
Yep.
And it's like walking up to a person being adversarial. Well, what's your problem?
Right.
You're not going to get a good response.
Exactly.
If you look at that person and you go, are you okay? How are you doing? Your response is going to be much better.
Right.
So it's imperative how you say things, how you ask things, how you regard them.
The tone.
Right.
So there you go. So ghost counseling after death, setting the tone. Got it. Definitely. So now you've got the video, you've got the audio, you've asked your questions. How do you encourage them to move on, to clear? What does it mean to clear?
So we refer to clearing as that's the very final step. That's after all the investigations have been done. That's after the clients have seen all of the footage where we had interaction.
Oh, so that's way steps ahead. So then what's before that then? I'm skipping way far ahead. Then what's the next step after you've asked the questions then done the counseling?
So after the investigation, usually there's a few. I mean, it's not a one-step process. I think we've had that happen maybe once, and that was just sheer luck. We kind of marveled at it ourselves. But usually there's a few of them. And each time we come back on the subsequent investigation, we'll go over the footage with the family that we obtained from the time before.
Oh, that's nice.
So they get to see all of the evidence. They get to hear all of it. We don't edit or doctor our footage. I have it all noted out literally in time stamps so that I can go through and show them every single thing. But they hear it and see it just as we did.
Wow.
I don't like it to be edited or doctored because I want them to have a genuine experience and know that we're not making anything up or fooling with that footage. And there's a lot that goes into that. There are other teams that do go over all that footage and do show some only show bits to the clients, some don't show any, some show it all. I show all of the key points that they need to see and everything that gave us genuine information.
Right.
When I do it. So I show them a great deal, and there are hours and hours. If we're in a house for 8 hours, then that review for me is probably going to take me about 12 hours.
Ooh, wow.
So I have to literally sit there and go through and document every single thing. If we have multiple spirits in a room, we've got multiple flashlights going off, I'm documenting both.
Right.
I'm documenting those questions and those answers on every single one. So it can take quite a while to go through it. And then when we go back and we reveal that to the clients, it's usually at least an hour of sitting with them and showing them the footage. And of course, there's stops. They're going to have questions. And, we show them before we start what gear we used, how that gear works, so that they have an understanding of what they're seeing when they look at those videos and they know. Once all of that's done and we've finished all of the subsequent investigations and we feel we're certain what we're dealing with and what's going on, then we make our recommendations. In some cases, maybe it is a family member and they don't want that person to be cleared.
So like if it's grandpa's, like grandpa can stay.
Right. Other people recognize and they're like, well, I want them to be at peace. I don't want them to be here.
Right.
So we'll still go through and do a clearing in those cases. Sometimes, obviously, if it's something negative, malevolent or demonic, the stuff that we usually deal with, people want that cleared.
Oh, yeah,
typically nobody wants to keep that. So,
bye all evil.
So we'll sit down with the family, and we have a very specific process. I won't go into details on publicly, just for certain reasons, but. We have a specific process we go through. We explain a lot to the family so that they kind of know what's going on every step of the way as we do it. If there are human spirits that need to be cleared, we always cross them first. And if there's anything demonic or something like that we're dealing with, then we kind of save that for the end. And it's different in every case because it just depends what we're dealing with.
Right. So let's say, for example, this is something that is on the lighter side. It's somebody that, let's say it's grandpa or grandma, but they do want them to cross over. What is the general process for that without giving away too many specifics?
So we use a lot of like guided meditation practices, things like that to connect with the spirits. So that they get a chance to, if they want, share anything, say anything to the family. It's usually very beautiful, emotional process. A lot of people think that process is going to be scary, and it very rarely is. It's usually very touching to everybody who's involved. And if the clients have any type of sensitivity, be it, I'm not talking full mediums, but just any type of sensitivity. There have been times where we've heard spirits. We had a 2-story house that we did a few years back. And as we were doing the clearing, one of the spirits upstairs started to sob and cry.
Oh,
and
my
we were
gosh.
downstairs in the living room, and you could hear it echoing through the house. And the client sat up and was, "What is that? What?" And I'm like, "It's okay. It's okay."
What?
Because it was emotional for them. They had waited so long, and they were finally getting that help. They were finally getting that day. And as soon as, we got to that phase of the process and he crossed, it ceased. And
Like
everything went
Oprah,
quiet.
making them cry.
Usually it's a beautiful thing. As we go, you can feel the house lighten. And a lot of times when we're done, the clients are like, "Wow, it feels so different. If it's daytime,
man.
it's so much brighter." And it's just a really beautiful process, beautiful feeling.
Wow.
And then I go around and I bless the whole house when we're done. If they have
Okay.
land, I also do the land.
Smart, the whole thing, because especially if it might be that, something is buried under there, if it's a different spirit. I'm sure you've come across that. Or
We've done a
Things
lot
like
with acreage and that kind of thing. So,
Right.
people that are out on ranches, so that can take a good bit of time just doing that part of it. But I think it's an essential part of it, because once we've kind of cleared it out and there's a void, we want to make sure that we're putting that positive energy out there and not leaving an open hole for something to be like, "Oh, that looks nice. Let's move in there."
Right. You're like, no, this is not space for rent.
Right.
Ghost rent. Go from ghost therapy to ghost rent.
And people can help themselves in the sense of claiming their space. That's something we tell a lot of people. A lot of people, especially with like larger homes, they'll have a couple of rooms they don't really use. And those are often the ones that they're more drawn to because they kind of claim the space for themselves.
Oh, no.
So we tell people all the time, claim your space.
Yes.
Make it your own. Put things in there that are comfortable to you, that you like, and
Absolutely.
visit all of your rooms regularly, at least in some capacity.
Oh, exactly. So apparently then the ghost, if my house would just haunt the gym because, no one's going in there using the treadmill that doesn't work or anything from there. So we would be haunted in our gym for sure. You'd be like, this is a nice space. This is nice. So you've cleared everything. The family is happy. Has there ever been times to where it was more difficult than others, the ghosts that didn't want to leave?
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely some that we have to talk to a lot more on site. There are some that we have to kind of remotely work with to a degree. And then there are clearings that just, are very, very long because at the last minute they're like, "Well, I'm kind of scared to go and I don't feel comfortable." And so we have to kind of gently urge them
Yes.
to come to that conclusion because they have to want it for themselves. That's free will.
Yes. So ghosts have feelings and ghosts can definitely decide if they want to
Absolutely.
stay or go. So that is good, though, that you're able to communicate with them and to help and encourage them. Because what do we all want when we pass anyways is peace, right?
Right.
And so they finally have someone to give them that. Mm-hmm. Has there ever been very many people that want them to stay?
Not very many. We've had a handful that did. We had a couple that they had a lot of very bad things.
Oh, no.
And they had a couple of very nice spirits there. But one of them was a little girl.
Oh, wow.
And
Again, no.
yeah, they had kind of an attachment to her in the sense like they looked at her almost like she was one of their kids.
Really?
And so they just
You can adopt a ghost?
they just couldn't handle the idea that she wouldn't be there anymore.
What?
They said it would to them feel like losing a child, so they didn't want her to go.
Now, that's different.
We've had several people, that maybe lost a spouse. And
Oh,
it's
well,
the
yeah.
spouse there. And so
That I
there's
understand.
there's that whole like, I lost this person once, I don't want to lose them again.
I can understand
So
that.
so there are definitely cases where those kind of things come into play. We've done a couple of historic homes, and like we had one gentleman that pretty much all of the occupants of his house were residents that built the house.
Oh,
and originally, like the
wow.
original family. And they
OGs.
still saw it as this is our home. And
Yeah.
he was very much like, it is their home. They want
Aw.
to stay and they're content. And I'm content to, live with them
Wow.
and work around it and not do things to upset them. Because he'd been doing construction and it was causing a bit of an
Oh,
uproar.
they're changing up their stuff. They're like, oh, I don't. What was that movie that they had a Netflix movie to where they were trying to take out the dumb waiter. And they're like, don't take it out, restore this, keep it the same. And people are like, oh my God. So yeah, I could see that.
Construction disrupts a lot. That's
Does
a
it
common
really?
thing. People are remodeling or totally redoing the house. That's often a thing that will
Right.
spark stuff up. Or if you have activity, it just kind of amps
I
up.
think there's places in Houston that we plan on trying to explore and getting our permission to film. I think there was I think the Rice Hotel was one of them, and now it's the Rice Lofts or the Rice. That's one of the ones that's on our list too. So I could see the construction disturbing things.
Absolutely.
All I know is that if I die and I haunt my husband, don't let him clear me. I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing the process with us, and we really appreciate that. We're, like I said, we're learning as we go along in our series here, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.